Okay, guys, we're back to Sanhedrin, Perek Gimel, Mishnah Hey. We're in the midst of discussing various psulim, various disqualifications for someone to serve as a witness or as a judge. Psulim for an aid and for a dayan. So now the Mishnah continues with other people who are ineligible, who are possible to serve as dayanim or to serve as aidim. So this short Mishnah teaches us Ha'oev ve'asoine, the friend and the enemy of a litigant cannot judge or testify about him because it is assumed that an oev, that a friend, and a soine, an enemy, they're both obviously biased. Now we need to understand, what do these terms mean? What is an oyev? What is a soine? So it says the Mishnah, oyev ze shushvinoi. Oyev, a friend, is someone who is a groomsman. He's involved in a chasene. He's involved with the chosan. He takes care of the chosan. He's a shushvinin. He's a good friend who took care of his wedding, who took care of the things that he needs for the chasene, or that he sent him wedding gifts. He sent him wedding gifts. So this friend cannot judge or testify about the chosan, about anything relating to the groom during the Shivas Yemei HaMishte, which means we're not talking about somebody who's an oyev, he's an old buddy. We're not talking about somebody who is a an old schoolmate. We're talking about someone who is related specifically to the chasene. The Rav says this, Shushvinoi, Re'eyu, his friend, his buddy, Bimei Chuposoi, during the Shivas Yemei HaMishte. So, Postul Loi Kol Yemei HaChuppah. He's possible to serve as an aid or as a dayan during the entire Shivas Yemei HaMishte. That's the case of the Oyev. And what is a soine, says the Mishnah? Soine Kol Shelo Diber Ima Shloisha Yomim Be'eva. Soine means somebody who is an enemy in quotation marks, someone who has not spoken to him for the past 3 days because of a conflict, because of some eva, because of some hatred. That's what the Tanakama says. The Chachamim disagree with the Tanakama in regard to giving edus, in regard to giving testimony. Amru loi, so the Chachamim said to the Tanakama, Lo nechshedu Yisrael al kach. Yidden, Jewish people, are not suspected of this. That is, they would not give false testimony out of love or hatred. They would not give false testimony. They wouldn't purposefully give wrong edus because they had something to do with the person, either on the friendly side or on the enmity side. And therefore, even a litigant's friend or an enemy can testify about him, can give edus, which means that the Chachamim allow a friend or an enemy only to serve as a witness. The Fashtetach agree that he cannot, under any circumstances, serve as a dayan. Why is that? Why did the Chachamim make a distinction between an aid and a dayan? Because an aid merely reports facts. He reports what he saw or what he heard. So therefore, even a friend or an enemy can be trusted to testify accurately. Lo nechshedu Yisrael al kach. A Yid is not suspected of giving false edus because he's either a friend or an enemy. He'll state what the facts are. On the other hand, a judge must be totally objective. A judge must be able to weigh the two sides of the case and reach a decision based on his understanding and reasoning. And even if he wants to find the truth, a friend will tend to miss arguments that go against the litigant, and an enemy will tend to miss arguments that go for the litigants, explains the Rav. And therefore, both agree that a friend or an enemy cannot serve as a dayan. Okay, that's the Chachamim responded, Loi nechshedu Yisrael al kach, and therefore a friend, an oyev, or a soine can serve as an aid and not as a dayan. Let's go on to Mishnah Vav. Mishnah Vav teaches us that after the witnesses tell the judges that they know the facts of the case, for example, they say this person owes money to that person, so we need to examine the witnesses. We must be boidek the Eidim. They must be examined by the Dayanim before they can give their Eidus in court. Says the Mishnah, Keitzad boitkin es Eidim. How do the Dayanim, how do the judges examine the witnesses? So this is the process. The judges bring them into the courtroom and make them afraid, make them shaky about testifying falsely. The Dayanim caution the witnesses by telling them that when witnesses take money to give false testimony, even the person who paid them looks down upon them. They give the example of the witnesses who were hired by the Malka Yezebel to testify falsely against Navos Israeli, that even the royal advisors who suggested hiring the witnesses referred to them as two corrupt men, as we find in Melochim Aleph, Perek Chof Aleph. Yes, the Rav says, they tell them bluntly, as it says in regard to Novois, B'nei Belial. B'nei Belial is a terrible name to be called, a terrible name to be referred to. So, and then they send everyone out of the courtroom. And they leave only the senior witness there. And they say to him, Emo, tell us, how do you know? Tell us, how do you know that this person, the defendant, owes money to that person, to the claimant? So Imamar, if the witness answers, what do you mean? The defendant said to me, I owe money to the claimant. Or he says, or the witness says, so-and-so told me that the defendant owes money to the claimant. Says the Mishnah, the witness has said nothing. This testimony is worthless. In the first case where the witness testified, the defendant said to me, I owe money to the claimant. The defendant's admission is not taken seriously. Why? Because people often pretend that they owe money in order to avoid being viewed as wealthy, says the Rav. In the second case, where the witness testified, so-and-so told me the defendant owes money to the claimant, again, the witness testimony is worthless because a witness can testify only about what he saw himself and not about what he heard from someone else. You saw it? Good. You heard about it? Doesn't mean anything. So therefore, again, Im amar hu amar li shu chayav lo. Ish ploini amar lo shu chayav lo. Lo amar klum. Doesn't mean anything. Lo amar klum. Ad shiyoimar befaneinu hoi lo shu chayav lo masayim. His testimony cannot be used. His testimony is not valid unless he says that the defendant admitted to the claimant before us witnesses, that he owes him 200 zuz. Shuchayav loy mosayim zuz. That is, in the presence of the claimant, the defendant said to me and to another man, you are my witnesses, atem eidai, you are my witnesses to the fact that I owe him money. So this admission was surely sincere, because if he were just pretending that he owes money, he would not have appointed witnesses. Once there are witnesses, that creates the validity of the Maise and subsequently of the Agodas Eidus. So the Mishnah continues, afterwards they bring the second witness and examine him just the same way. If the statements of the two witnesses are found to be consistent, if the two Agodas Eidus, the two witnesses, speak consistently, report consistently, then the Dayanim go ahead and deliberate. In other words, the witnesses must agree about the basic facts of the case, such as when and where was the money borrowed. But if they contradict each other about some side detail that's not crucial and consequential to be able to determine the veracity of their Agodas Eidus, then their testimonies are accepted. So says the Meiri. So then the Dayanim deliberate. So now how do we adjudicate? How do we paskin? How do we paskin? Based on what? Says the Mishnah. Shnayim oimrim zakai. If two of the Dayanim say that the defendant is not liable, and one says he's chayav, zakai, he's not liable. Shnayim oimrim chayav. If two of the Dayanim say that he's liable, that the defendant is liable, zakai, and one says he's not liable, chayav, he is liable. He's liable. Zakai, one says he's liable, two says he's chayav, then he's chayav. Now, let's remember that in Dinei Momonos, in monetary cases, we need simply a majority of one. Unlike Dinei Nefoshois, unlike capital cases, where a majority of at least two is needed to find the defendant guilty. Okay? That we learned in the Mishnah, in Perek Daled, Mishnah Aleph. So again, let's review. Shnayim omim zakai ve'echad omim chayav, he's zakai. Shnayim omim chayav ve'echad omim zakai, he's chayav. Now what happens, however, if echad omim zakai ve'echad omim chayav? If one judge says he's not liable, one judge says he is liable, va'afilu shnayim zakim or shnayim chayvin, or even if two judges find him not liable or two find him liable, and ve'echad omer eini yodea, and the third dayan says, I don't know, I can't come to a conclusion, I can't figure it out. What happens then? Yosifu hadayonim. Judges are added to the court. Favos, because since the third judge cannot vote, he says he doesn't know. So he's not regarded as a judge. Bichlal in the case. He's taking himself out. Heini yodea. So judges must therefore be added, because a monetary case cannot be decided with a court of fewer than 3 dayanim. 2 judges at a time are added until a majority opinion is reached, tells us the Rambam in Hilchos Sanhedrin. although only one judge was unable to make a decision, we still nevertheless must add two dayanim so that the two of them can discuss the case with each other. It's not enough to discuss the case with the original dayanim because they already made up their mind. So how will the third judge be able to analyze, to discuss, to see, to evaluate? He needs another judge, and therefore we add two dayanim. Okay.